Hello, my name is Rob Wilson, you're watching the Video Gadgets Journal, and a couple of weeks ago you asked me any question. Well, it's time to answer those questions. First of all, thank you very much for firing in your questions. I got 13 total and I'm going to try and rattle through as many as possible without rambling. And remember, I said the 4 best questions will receive prizes. So if your question appears and you get one of these, then you've won a prize. Just contact me through any of my social media accounts and I'll get back in touch with you to send you the item. So let's kick off with the first question. Sriraj Senior, and I do apologise if I butcher anybody's name throughout this video, he asks, "Hi buddy, is it worth buying an iPhone 5S now?" Well, such a question will always get a subjective answer. And the subjective answer is, if you can get one cheap enough and you don't mind a smaller phone, then absolutely. The 5S is still a pretty good phone in terms of performance, as long as you don't play any games on it. It has iOS 9, the latest version of the Apple operating system, and a fingerprint scanner, so it's up to date in terms of most things Apple are offering, except for the peek and touch 3D screen type thing. So if you can get one maybe on Craigslist or wherever you are in the world, maybe eBay, maybe a second-hand one, then I don't see any reason why you don't want to get one. If you're transitioning from Android, just remember that there are a few compromises, but on the Switch side, you will get buttery smooth performance as long as you don't do anything too labour intensive on the phone. Next up, Johnny Bowers tells us he's on the verge of buying a smartwatch. He's watched CES and is interested in his Sony smartwatch, and he wants to know my general opinions on what I think about getting a smartwatch. And that comes from the fact that I have a Moto 360, which I've had for about a year now, and I have to say that since I bought it, I've never looked back. For the simple reason of getting notifications on your wrist, which means you don't have to take your phone out of your pocket. And it does a lot of things that just come naturally, and you don't even have to do anything like tracking your fitness daily without even having to set any goals or press any buttons. It will just automatically track that, and I love it. Whether it actually makes you do anything more fitness driven is a completely different matter. Yes, you do need to charge it every day, and the resolution isn't quite great, and sometimes it can be a little laggy and buggy, but the other fantastic thing about the watch is that you can change it every single day with a new watch face. So if you are going to get a smartwatch, and we're moving on to the second generation ones now, I would definitely recommend it because you can probably pick one up now for about $100. I recently saw the Moto 360 actually in a Canadian shop for $120, which is about 60 quid. So yeah, I would definitely get a smartwatch, and let me know what you think once you have one. Ace Rising asks, I have a few questions, but I think one is enough. Do you think you can record, cut and render your videos with an Linux distribution? What? Paddy Fellows asks, what's your take on YouTube Red and all the other moves Google seems to be making in regards to longer form content? Well, YouTube Red isn't really available in too many countries yet. I believe it's only available in the US at the moment, and that is of course paid subscription to YouTube. And I think you get also Google Music in there as well. Basically, if you're going to try and persuade people to move off a free platform onto a paid subscription platform, it's a very hard sell. And I have no intention of making my content subscription only at the moment. So we'll have to wait and see with that and see what impact it has when YouTube makes it globally available. But for now, YouTube Red, meh. Alright, Arif Hussain has a two-pronged question. What do you think is the best strategy that has worked well for you to get more traffic to your channel, and what are you expecting from tech this year in smartphones? To answer the first question, probably the best strategy, maybe the most difficult one, is to try and produce time-sensitive videos as quickly as possible. So if there's a big news story that comes out that's trending, maybe the new announcement of a phone, and you can get a video out pretty much within maybe 6 hours of release, you're always going to get a lot of traffic just by people using searches, and if you get your tags right. The other thing is to try and become an authority on one particular area, or that has worked in the past. Say for example me, I targeted the Asus Transformer Prime, the Nexus 7, and those videos created almost a bit of a following because people were interested in me completely consuming a device and doing as many tips and reviews as possible. Although that has changed in recent years on YouTube, it's now more about fan base and following. If you can create a brand, which is something that I feel I've struggled with on my channel, You can get people to like your personality, your style of videos, and become very engaged and almost spread organically as a person. That is another way of gaining a lot of views and traction for your channel. In terms of new smartphones, we're going to see lots of sequels: the iPhone 7, the Samsung Galaxy S7, the LG 5, blah blah blah. What am I going to see? They'll probably put all their screens up to 4K, which is completely unnecessary since the DPI is so high on phones these days. We'll probably try and do something with battery, maybe more wireless charging, which is ultimately slower than fast charging or wired charging, so I find it a bit pointless. And maybe I'm sounding a bit cynical here, but it's difficult to really predict what's going to go on in the smartphone market because it's so it's grown so big and there's so much competition that it's very hard to find an innovative product out there at the moment, and people are just battling more almost on marketing, who can get their phone the most exposure, not necessarily the best technology that wins out these days. Take the iPhone for example. Gino Gruemo asks, which mobile operating system do you prefer, iOS, Android or Cygen OS? Well, I have an Apple iPad and the iOS is a fairly good operating system. It's buttery smooth and silky fast, that's what I like about it. But Android gives you so much flexibility to do whatever you want, and that's my preferred one. As for Cygen, I've got to be honest, I've never actually used it. Jimmy Dane asks, how do you deal with negativity on YouTube? Well, I deal with it like any sane person would. The simple answer is you can't please everybody when it comes to YouTube. And at least if you're getting negative comments, then people are engaging with you. But I try to look at it in this way. I've had 14.5 million views, about 22,000 subscribers, countless likes, countless comments, and I have 30 of you asking questions of interest about my channel. So I know at least I'm doing something right. And that's who I'm more interested in. I'm not interested in the people who are negative. If I get any swearing on my channel, then I usually ban them and I just ignore them. Or I will simply make a bit of fun out of the situation. You just have to take the rough with the smooth, and if you're doing a good job, then concentrate on that. And that's what I feel I'm doing. I'm not doing a perfect job, I know that, or I would be a bigger channel than I am. But it is just one of those things in life. You have to take the positives and ignore the negative comments. Scott Mayat asks, hey Rob, Happy New Year to you. What was your favourite app for Android and iOS of 2015? Well, I'm not sure if it actually came out in 2015, but the app I've probably used most is something called Podcast Addict. I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially sport ones, because I like to listen to football podcasts in Canada. I'm originally from the UK, and Podcast Addict is very good at just finding the podcasts you want, downloading them and playing them seamlessly, and it's a perfect application for me. So maybe not the best answer, and I've never featured it on the channel, but Podcast Addict for listening to podcasts is my favourite app of 2015. The next question comes from Array75, who says, hi, what made you... hang on, stop. Let's hope that light's fixed. The next question comes from Array75, who says, hi, what made you decide to start doing videos in the first place? Well, originally, going back 7 or 8 years, the channel had nothing to do with technology. I started posting social anxiety videos because I thought I had a problem with speaking to people and self-confidence, and it was a bit of a blog. I think I did about 50 videos on the subject. But as time went on, I grew in confidence and I kind of tried to make changes to my life, and I think I have overcome whatever I thought I may have had in terms of confidence. So obviously I always had an interest in technology, and again about 7 years ago I just produced a technology video on the Creative Vado video recorder, and it's still actually on my site if you want to check it out. There's probably a link, or this video is appearing now on screen. And I didn't do anything again for a few years, and then when I got the Galaxy S2 I just started making videos again, and I decided, or I realised, that I really enjoyed making videos. And I've always had a creative side to myself, whether it was writing at university or running a student newspaper or trying to run a video games website. That's where the actual name from this channel comes from. It wasn't Video Gadgets Journal, it used to be Video Gamers Journal. but obviously it was easy to change the name. And as I did more videos and got more technology and the channel grew, it's just become a mini obsession, I guess. And that's the story of the Video Gadgets Journal, basically. Anishar, Nexus 6P versus Samsung Galaxy Note 5, camera only, and why? Galaxy Note 5, because I never tried either cameras, but Galaxies usually have good cameras and everybody says it's the best camera. Happy? And Karolek asks, I'm desperately in need of a new computer. I'm thinking about getting one with a docking station or something similar. I've gotten used to a 23-inch screen and don't want to give it up. Any suggestions? So if you want to get a new one, I hear that the Dell XPS 13s are very good, but I'm sticking with my Gigabyte one. So I'm not really completely up to date with new computers. Maybe if you want to completely splash out on something very fancy, then the Microsoft Surface Book is getting a lot of attention, and I'm sure you can plug that into a big monitor if you want, and it just gives you portability when you're not at your desk. Nicholas Johnson asks, hey man, how long does it take to make a video from start to finish? Great question, and I have already done a video on this. It's about a year old, but I'll put it on screen now. But to answer your question briefly, it usually equates to about 1 minute of video equates to 1 hour of work. So let's say a 5-minute video takes around about 5 hours. Now that can vary. For example, this video is probably going to be more than 10 minutes, but it won't take as long to edit because basically it's just me talking to the camera. On all my other videos, I usually do a lot of editing, and the biggest ball ache for me is narrating it by writing a script and then doing all the voiceovers. And I wish I could talk more confidently to the camera, but I always use ums and ahs and stutter over my words. So I try and make it as professional as possible by taking a long time doing that. Also this year I'm going to invest a lot of time into improving the quality of my videos. You may notice new lighting here. I bought a new camera. I'm trying to look at new editing software which is impenetrable without doing a lot of learning to get better at it. So it may be that the length of time to make a video increases, but hopefully the quality will also increase at the same time. Henk van Omen asks a really long question about what would be the ideal smartphone that I would want, and it's such a difficult question to answer because it's so subjective. I think if I was going to break it down, it would essentially be a Samsung phone with a few bits stripped out and a few bits added, because Samsung tend to be the flagships for Android phones, and it's just a TouchWiz OS that most people complain about and maybe a few performance issues, but they tend to get the camera right. I love the AMOLED display, but it gets to a point where you're adding technology which isn't really necessary, and sometimes the Galaxy phones do that. So maybe it would be the Samsung Galaxy S range for a OnePlus price, and then we're pretty much there. But in terms of specifics, it would take too long to answer. Wendell Chavez asks, how old are you? And the answer is 34. I was born in 1981, the same year that Princess Diana and Prince Charles got married. Tobias Christensen Eklund's question is, while a smartwatch is useful, is it useful enough to be worth as much as a Huawei watch or an Apple Watch? And what are my thoughts on the different operating systems such as watchOS, Android Wear and Tizen? Well, I'm afraid I've only tested the operating system on the Moto 360, but the Apple Watch is astronomically expensive. I don't know how much the Huawei watch is, so I haven't really got much of an answer for you there. But as I said in the previous answer, the next generation of smartwatch watches are coming out and the price is starting to tumble, so maybe give it until the end of 2016 and you should be able to get something very cheap, whatever you want. And there's a bit of cross-pollination on operating systems as well, with Samsung announcing that their new smartwatches will work on Apple Watches. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get whatever watch we want for whatever smartphone operating system we want. While you were reading my oh so very long username, I was able to successfully steal your sandwich. Asks, how much money do you make on YouTube? Hang on. Where's it gone? Son of a bitch! To answer your question, I earn around about 20,000 Video Gadget Journal credits a day. Google it and see if you can find a conversion rate, but I don't think it's listed, so tough luck. Victor Ecroft asks, would you call Cygen OS a real OS or just a modern version of Android that has become a bit full of itself? Well, as I said earlier, I've never tried Cygen OS, so I'm just going to agree with you. Mahesh I asks, do you like to see stock Android in new Samsung flagship phones? Now I believe they've done this in past iterations, I can't remember which ones, maybe the Galaxy S2 and S3, but I will say this, coming from my Nexus 6 experience, be careful what you wish for when it comes to stock Android. There is the argument that you do get a pure experience, but the fallback is that sometimes you lose some features that are quite useful. I'm going to take this as a very random example, but with my Nexus 6, if I press and hold the power button, the only option I get is the power off option. I'm not sure whether you can see it on screen. Now with usual Galaxy S devices, you will get the option to put it to flight mode, silent mode and potentially other options. And that's something that I quite like with phones that add their own software. Sometimes it can be a double-edged sword because you get all sorts of extra crap like TouchWiz, for example, on Samsung. But in terms of phones diversifying and offering their own options, then I think there is some credence to that. I've just upgraded, or I say upgraded, I've just changed my Nexus 6 to a OnePlus X. And this is near stock, but it does add a couple of extras, such as the ability to do a circle gesture to open the camera, or press or double tap to unlock. And those are really brilliant features which I'd like to see, but you don't necessarily get them in the stock experience. So to be honest, I think phones should offer maybe both their own versions, and if they're very successful and people clamour for a stock version, then maybe, but how often is that going to happen? Devin Gray asked, how long have you been interested in tech? Well, from my very first computer, which was an Amstrad CPC 464, and UK viewers will probably be the only ones who recognise that name, along with Spectrum and Commodore 64s, I've been interested in tech, and that was when I was about 4 or 5 years old, and I've gone through all the video gaming consoles. And now as I've grown up, I game less, but I'm still very much interested in technology, and I've settled on smartphones and tablets as my main area of interest. The one thing I will say is that I'm glad I grew up in a world without the internet, because I think it's so consuming and dominates so much of my time now and the world in general, that I'm just happy that I lived in a world where for kids the best thing to do was to go out and play sports and play with friends until it got dark without parents worrying about where you are. And that kind of society has moved and changed a little bit, especially with the introduction of the internet and so many other things. So a bit of a personal insight there for you. Warlandalist asks, will you continue to answer every comment? Well, after I made a recent video about how to record on your iPad, and I've had about 300 questions asking me for an airshoe code, the answer is no. I haven't got any codes! Zoomed Mystery asks, Rob, you did long reviews on the Nexus 7, Galaxy S4, Nexus 6, so is there a chance to have reviews like you did back in the day with new Galaxy or the Pixel C or the Nexus 5X? Great question, and the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. When I did the videos on the Nexus 7 and the Asus Transformer Prime, I think YouTube operated in a very different way, whether it was to do with the search engines or the platform just hadn't matured enough. But now I think people have a much less patience and I guess short-term memory. They're not interested in looking at videos which completely consume and dissect one particular product. People are very transigent, they move from one thing to the next very quickly, and it's taken me about a year to realise that with the coverage of a Nexus 9 and a Nexus 6. I really didn't get much interest in those videos, and so I've decided to really drop the pretense that people want to see very detailed reviews about a product. I guess I'm more picking and choosing things as I go along to try and stay current. As I said in a previous comment, if you can create trending videos on recent topics, then that stands a better chance than covering a product 3 or 4 months after it's released. So I'm sorry, I am trying to change with the times of YouTube and keep more current and up to date, even though that's very difficult when there's so many tech channels who can get technology very quickly, whereas I really don't have that many contacts and I do this part-time. It's a lot more difficult. So I'm trying to branch out into other things which have more of a timeless element to them, in terms of maybe doing tutorials and covering apps. But I will try and cover some technology as well in 2016. A few of you have also asked a question about me making videos for Ash and his C4E Tech channel. So let me try and briefly explain what's going on there. We have both been making videos for around about 3 or 4 years, and he cites me as one of the people who helped him very early on in terms of how to narrate and script videos. And basically he just wants to give me some help with my channel by giving me some exposure on his channel. So it's not a case of I begged him to work on C4eTech. He offered me the opportunity and I'm very, very thankful for it, and I'm already seeing some benefits from it. So it's just a case of two channels collaborating who have been on the same path, but one has been more successful than the other. Jeremiah Fudge asks, what video editor do you use? And the answer is Camtasia. As a step up from a very simple video editor such as Movie Maker, Camtasia keeps those simplistic elements, but it adds a lot of new features such as picture-in-picture, zooming and panning, and actual animations onto clips, which you've probably no doubt seen throughout this video. The one drawback with Camtasia is that it has a pretty rudimentary playback and rendering engine, which means that it can crash a lot, and if you do something very complex, then it struggles to output the video and it can't do anything in 4K. The next step up obviously is something like Adobe Premiere Pro, which I'm being pushed to use, but it's an absolute beast and very complicated to use. So at the moment I'm kind of in transition, but I absolutely love Camtasia as a video editing program. And that's it, your questions answered. I do apologise if I didn't answer every question. A few of them were duplicates, and I started to realise that the video was running well over my time. As I said, if you did see the thumbs up on your question, get in contact with me if I don't get in touch with you, and I'll make sure I send you one of the items that you have won. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know, and I may do a similar one in the future. As always, my videos love getting a thumbs up click, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, then do so. It's absolutely free. Enjoy the rest of your tech day. Bye for now.